Good morning and welcome back to the channel. Today Eric and I are going to be working on this garden gate behind us. We did it a few years back and there has been some major shifting in the ground, so some of the posts aren't quite beautiful anymore, and really the whole thing's eligible to be redone, but we just don't have time for that, and our main focus is getting this garden gate done behind us. So we're just going to be working on this.
Yep, we're going to be upgrading these two posts. We're going to use some really nice logs. We're going to use a sawmill. We're going to cut like a really cool planter box for the top, and we're going to head to the back forest and we're going to collect some wood.
Yep.
I got to grab my coffee cup and then we're ready to go.
I'm not going to have any more liquid, so. You're just going to go out there. About 3 feet further.
Okay, ready?
There you go.
On there, I don't know, I just measured with my foot.
I saw that.
We could probably cut at least a foot off the top.
That's good. You're not gonna hit it. That's good. I don't want to hit it. Can we get it kind of all the way there? Is your plan to lift it? I could probably lift it with you.
Here, let me go. Let's go. Just slide it your way about 2 feet.
I can lift this up.
Okay.
No problem.
Good job. watching a bunch of sign stuff, and most people do. They flip it upside down now.
Well, I was gonna tell you earlier. I thought it was.
Can't wait to get that
Can't use it, but we're not gonna use it.
Get that auto.
Oh man, it's not a good place to be, Spider. You want me to tell you about how low?
Sure, let's just take a little off top. We can always cut again, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think an inch. That is a big beam.
Yeah. Look at the cool look, too. Alright, now we can drop these all the way down. Tighten them. We milled some lumber. We made some, they're like 2x8s. They're 1.5 by 7.5 inches. Had a real crooked log that we used. So we got about 8 feet usable lumber. This is going to be way too big for the little planter box we want to put on top of the little gate posts. But yeah, pretty cool. We'll probably cut it down to like 5 or 6 feet. But next step is we're going to rip out the old posts, and those ones are concreted in. So I think I'm going to get the sledgehammer, and we're going to try to chip it off.
Trying like put these up somewhere tight. Like, is that possible? What do you mean? They don't lose all their slack?
We're going to have to redo it.
Excuse me?
We're going to have to redo it.
We're gonna have to redo it, really?
Well, you got to take those ones off.
Awful. Post where the concrete is already the hole, right?
Yeah, it's already a hole.
Did we put
Oh, you can dig it deeper.
did it hit you or something? I know.
Oh yeah, it's plenty tall enough.
I'd say that's quite tall enough. What would make life better for you right now?
You don't want to know.
I do. Yeah, maybe we should. Should I mix in some gravel? Isn't there wire here?
Yeah. We need to put those two that are going to go this way.
Mm-hmm. You don't think those ones too? Oh, I can't move it.
We need to put the two that go that, or I guess the 4. I have to tighten that one by hand, but she's there.
too far.
No.
It's irrelevant. Splinter!
I know, I got one too.
Okay. It's not actually that heavy to get up there. You know what I mean? It is heavy, but it's not like...
300 pounds, maybe?
Huh? Yeah. I can definitely whip one side. Oops. Oh yeah, that's fine. Whoa!
It's already good, isn't it?
Can you hold it really tight?
Yeah.
Wait a second. Wait.
Okay. Turn her on. You got it?
Yeah, I just... Oh, how cool is that one? This one's the Tip Top Alaska, and it has the yellow and the orange. We're out at the garden. We finally got our new gate finished and it looks awesome. It's really big, a little bit bigger than I expected. We have a really cool planter up top and we put nasturtium in it. I started those earlier this year in anticipation to put them up there. They vine and they look awesome like in hanging baskets. So this year, being that it's like July 29th, they're probably not gonna get that big, but next year when I get an earlier start on them, they should get really big and come down, and I'll probably even have to trim them away from our electric fence. I'm super excited about that. It's something I've been bugging Eric about and we finally got around to doing it. We ended up repurposing the same gate that we have, but it's all straightened now, so it's really nice to open. And we're gonna head inside and look at the garden and see how it's doing. So you may be able to tell that it's changed a lot in here. We have put on some major growth. It's the end of July and we have been harvesting quite a bit, but there's still a lot of things that we've yet to harvest. It just hasn't been warm enough, or the whole season hasn't gone by, and a lot of our food is honestly for harvesting and storing and preserving. Not quite as much of it is for fresh eating. So without further ado, we're gonna walk around and show you guys how things are doing. Something that's not quite ready is all of our onions, shallots, and leeks. Those take a lot longer of the growing season. They're doing really well this year. When we started them and put them out here, I was pretty happy with how thick they were. I'm feeling like they still need some more time to bulb. Their bulbs aren't very big yet, and I'm really hopeful that they'll get quite a bit bigger. And then once we get to August, we're gonna hit a period where they're gonna flop over. Hopefully we'll dry them out and we'll cure them and we'll store them inside. Our leeks at the end, we are growing those mostly for canning since I don't really have a great way to store them. I did freeze them last year and that worked pretty well. In my hand, I have some bunching onions or green onions, and these are awesome. I only grow a small amount of these since we don't really use them for canning. They're just more for like fresh eating, and they're so delicious. The perennial berry row back here is doing really well. Our gooseberry looks awesome. The raspberries have a lot of fruit this year. And we have been pulling some honeyberries. All right, so this is what they look like. And they're really delicious. They taste like, I think they taste like a grape blueberry. Really good. Sometimes they're a little bit tart, but I really like them. They're really good. Eric and I came out here last night and harvested a whole big amount, and we already ate them. These guys have been pretty rewarding to have this year. The first year we got them, they did have berries. The second year they put on a lot of growth and didn't really have as much fruit. This year they had quite a bit of fruit, and you can tell they've put on a lot of growth. I don't know if you can tell, but I can tell they've put on a lot of growth, and they're just getting bigger and bigger. And these are known as haskaps or honeyberries. It's a good berry for our climate, just like the raspberries. And here in Alaska, we're also lucky to have a lot of wild berries that do well. So we've been picking wild berries as well. This section of the garden has gotten a little bit out of control. There are a lot of weeds, which I will get to that in just a moment. A lot of clover, and I intentionally left the clover last year. I wanted it to be like a living mulch. It's kind of a neat concept, but it got a little out of control this year. The bees love it, so that's the upside. This is just a random bed I have of herbs and flowers and such. The lovage is doing really well, and we have some lemon balm that's doing pretty good in there with all the weeds. The other awesome thing about clover is that it has some really incredible benefits, and I like to use it for tea. I love it for tea. It's wonderful. Usually when I'm making tea blends, I don't do just one herb or plant. I'll do a mixture. So one thing I found last year I like to mix this with is Nasturtium, yarrow, and we've also been adding some chamomile to that mixture too. So I'm just gonna pick a few of these while I'm out here. We redid the strawberry bed this year, and it's doing really good so far. I'm pretty excited with our balance of amendments in the soil. Last year it was a little heavy on the nitrogen, so I had a lot of abundant leafy growth, and this year you can tell they're actually putting on flowers and they have strawberries, which is what we want. There are quite a bit of runners, so I'm gonna let some of these go this year. I know I said originally I wasn't going to, but not all of the plants made it that we, dug up and replanted. I think we're missing a handful, so I am going to let some of the runners go, and we're going to fill those in next year. But I'm pretty excited. I think this year we may get some strawberries. It's a little bit late in the season. I don't know how long these are going to go, but next year I'm betting we'll get some strawberries for sure. This is where some of our root crops are. We've got our carrots, turnips. I'm trying rutabaga again this year, and then beets. And then I have Swiss chard and peas at the end. This year I wanted to try and pull back a little bit on how much manure we used. I thought in the past maybe we were using a lot. And I gotta be honest, some stuff it's like great. I'm really pleased with it. I think it really was more balanced with that. But the other things that need really high nitrogen fertilizer, like our Brussels sprouts and our onions, they just didn't have it. So I was a little bit disappointed with that. I think next year I'm gonna make sure that the ones that I know like a lot of nitrogen get it. But everything looks good so far. These are just taking a long time to go. So this is a purple top round turnip, but this one's clearly didn't get the message. He's a little elongated. These are awesome. It's my absolute favorite turnip. It's probably the only one I'll grow in the future, but it is really good for fresh eating. So we like to eat this and the kohlrabi fresh. I've canned turnip a few different times, and I'm just not really a big fan of it. I like it cooked. It's good cooked, but we just eat it raw mainly. So we're gonna put this one aside for some salad or something. We have some upcoming plans to make kimchi with the turnips and daikon radish. They always bolt, but they usually do form a pretty nice root. The beets over here look okay. Honestly, I've never really been as pleased with them as we used to be able to grow them in Oregon. I think it's a timing thing. I think they have to germinate right on time, and they really need a longer, slightly warmer season. But they do okay. Last year we had some really big ones, and this year I've been thinning them, but they're not huge yet. The Swiss chard's doing really well this year. I think I finally figured out how to not get it to bolt for the most part. Looks like a yellow variety is bolting, but it was to start it later and to wait until it warms up. And I just learned that from reading around. It seems like that's what most people in this area do. We've got all these different colors, these different varieties. Absolutely beautiful rainbow Swiss chard. Now I can't actually eat this much. We grow a lot of our greens for the chickens. If you see a lot of leafy plants, it's because we feed them every day from the garden. Peas are doing awesome, and I think they're like over 6 feet tall right now. We have snow peas and we have snap peas, and the snap peas are the sugar snap peas. I have a purple variety, and then we just have like a standard snow pea. The snow peas are awesome. We're trying to keep up with these fresh, but there's so many that I usually end up freezing them or just doing something else with them somehow because it's a lot to eat fresh. We've got almost 20 feet of garlic, and we're getting close to when we're going to be pulling it up. You can see the tips are turning yellow. When it's ready or showing that it's ready, more of the outer leaves will turn yellow, and that's when we'll know to pull it up. But of course I have been just kind of taking a peek at the bulbs and seeing how they're doing. They look pretty good this year. I think I got my fertilizers more balanced, and I paid attention. I gave them more bone meal, and they look really good. You can see they're forming these nice bulbous cloves, but they don't quite have the indentations yet where their cloves are going to be. Part of growing the hardneck garlic variety means that you get these wonderful things called escape. And escape is the flower. So it's like a flower stalk that comes up. You do want to trim it. You want to trim the escape off pretty early because that will redirect the energy back down to the bulb, which is what you are growing the crop for. And you can cook these up. They taste just like garlic. In fact, rather than cooking them up, we really prefer to use them in pesto. They are awesome. We make a whole bunch of pesto and then we freeze it, and we have it to look forward to in winter. We've got some flowers mixed in with this row because I love a pop of color with all the green. It's a forest of green. So I usually like orange. I usually grow marigolds, but this year I switched it up a little bit and I call it calendula, but I think it's calendula. It's this orange plant right here. It's beautiful. And we're also growing a purple salvia, and I believe it may be called like Blue Monday or something like that. And there's some borage next to it. So I grew a lot of fennel this year, and it's looking really good. I think we're going to be maybe trying to can some of it in some recipes. Oh, it's delicious. Not raw. I don't like it raw. It tastes just like black licorice, but cooked, I don't really know what it tastes like, but it's really, really good. This is a nice bulb. Going to be eating that one. And then right next to that, we have celery and celeriac. Both of those crops are long season, so they require, I think, like over 100 days. And the celery always does really good. It goes right until the end, right until we get our frosts, which again can be in September. It's usually in September, but I usually don't have to pull these that early. And I've never grown the celeriac before. They've got some nice bulbs forming on them this year. This is the potatoes, and they have done what they do every year, which is get outrageously big. They get super tall. We cannot keep up with them and hill them, and they just flop over and keep growing. So they're doing really well, and you can see they all have, well, not all of them, but most of them have flowers. This year, with all the new varieties we're growing, I've got some really cool colored flowers, from like pale yellow all the way to like a violet color at the end. It's really fun to look at. I went ahead and tried squash again this year and pumpkins. And of course we're growing zucchinis. The zucchinis always do really well. Those are flowering and have a lot of squash on them already. But our winter squash is a whole nother story. I suffered a little bit of a late frost, or they suffered from a late frost. I lost a few plants. The ones that made it are doing really well, and we have some that, you know, I planted late. I don't think we're gonna get a whole bunch of them, but there is actual, like, you know, fruit maturing, so we'll see. Been trying to go along and thin them out and kind of pull off the extra vines because we just do not have a long enough season to grow these. But I really like winter squash. Our corn is tasseling successfully, and I've been coming along and shaking these. I mean, we get really good pollination out here being outside, so I'm not that worried about it. And there are actual little miniature corns forming. There's about one per stalk, maybe two. Definitely not the best yielding, but I think we may get corn. It may be uber small, but I'm pretty excited about that. The kale looks awesome, as usual. I'm a big kale fan. And then I've got some green oric right here. That's really pretty. It's a light green kind. Our kohlrabies we're just eating fresh. We have a massive one over here, and the other way they're really good is canned in like coleslaw. I want to try them in salsa. We'll see if we have some of them when we make salsa this year. We've got some more of these beautiful flowers over here, and I think this is only like 2 or 3 plants. And you can see there's a lot more heads that haven't even opened yet. So really, really impressed with it. It's beautiful. And I primarily grew it for tea. So I come along and I get these leaves and I just dry them out for tea. Lettuces are still doing really good. We're trying to eat through those. This was where all of our mustards were, and it's long past that season. So we just let most of them flower for the bees. They love it. And this is actually going to be where we're going to plant garlic this fall. So that's why I planned it that way. The Brussels are looking pretty good. I think they got a little bit bigger last year. That's something that really likes a lot of nitrogen. So I don't know if that's why, but they look really good. This row's been doing pretty good. Some things are taking a little bit longer. I have that Elwes cross cabbage. That's taking a really long time. In fact, I don't know if we're going to get some big cabbages from that this year or not. I have our cauliflowers. Those are doing pretty good. We've got some nice sizes, nice size heads, but generally we get really, really big ones. And this year it's looking like some of them are trying to kind of open up or spread out. Cabbages are right on point. They look great. This is Presto, and this variety is totally ready to harvest. I mean, we're gonna have to get in here soon and make some sauerkraut. The red varieties take a little bit longer to reach maturity. This is Copenhagen. That one's ready too, or getting close to being ready. And then again, I just have some later maturing varieties. We've got like 40 cabbages in here. Gosh, I wanted to show these neat little contraptions that Eric made. They're actually for our chickens to come into the garden. The chickens do not get to come into the garden for one main reason. They're after all the bugs in the soil, so they will just demolish the soil. Naturally, that will affect the plant's roots, which will affect our plants. So they're not allowed in here unless we can supervise them. And Eric built these little tunnels and they can chill out in here. The weeds have gotten absolutely out of control this year. I know I'm one to say weeds don't bother me. Usually they don't, but when they grow in the shade, even when we have densely, planted plants and they grow quickly, that becomes problematic, and chickweed is one of those. So we've got some plans for what we're going to do next year. This was working pretty well. We just throw 1 or 2 chickens in here and we'll let them scratch around, and they really go for the dirt more so than the green stuff. This side of the garden is our asparagus, our recently redone asparagus row. They're doing pretty good this year. There's some weeds, of course, and this is what we're doing. So this is something we've talked about, and we did this in the orchard. We laid down some landscaping fabric, really thick stuff that we trust that weeds and grass aren't going to go through, and we put this awesome mulch. And this is mulch that we actually wood chipped ourselves from our other property. It's quaking aspen, birch, and spruce, and it's awesome. It's thick. Really excited about it. It really makes for a really beautiful look, but predominantly it's going to help us with weed control. Now, you can mulch and you do not need to use the fabric. However, since we already have so many weeds, it's just not really something I was willing to try, because I know our weeds will in fact grow through them and it's going to be problematic. So we're not getting that really cool benefit that you get when you lay wood chips down with the soil, but it is really pretty, and like I said, it is going to help us with weeds, because the weeds they've been just a nightmare this year. They've been too time consuming for Eric and I to get in here and manually weed everything. We saved the best last, and this is the high tunnel. Looks really awesome in here this year. We're having a good year. It hasn't been that warm, but it hasn't been that cool. So I think things in here are doing pretty well. I keep the door closed predominantly. We get plenty of pollination, so I don't really have to worry about that. This is our tomato row. They have totally taken off probably since I last brought you in here. And I'm doing an experiment. We're growing predominantly determinate kinds of tomatoes, which you generally don't prune, but I pruned them. And I did that because our growing season is so short. Every year I see a bunch of these little flower clusters that don't form tomatoes, or if they have tomatoes, they're small. And I figured it just makes sense to cut a lot of the plants off, even though I'm cutting technically flowers off in tomatoes. We're just in such a short season that those weren't even going to mature anyways. So I've already noticed, it's pretty interesting. If you take a look down here, these guys along the front are the ones I pruned. I did not prune the ones along the back. And when I just like tilt my head, you can see that the ones on this front row have way bigger tomatoes than the ones in the back. and that's because I haven't pruned those most likely. So I think that's a technique I'm going to keep up. These probably are not going to turn red for another month. We may even have to ripen them inside. That's the sunflower. He's doing great. It's actually working out great in here. I love it. The sunflowers outside aren't even a foot tall. The peppers are doing really good. We have bell peppers, hot peppers, banana peppers, a whole slew more actually. I don't know how many we have. It's over 80. It's a lot of them, but they're doing good and we like them and they do well. I also put some green beans in here. They were a little late this year, but they are going up. They're starting to climb. They look really cool. Trying some scarlet runner beans for the first time. They're quite beautiful. I'm very excited about that. This year it seems like our humidity has been a little bit higher in here with me keeping the doors closed, and I do run the fans and open the doors on occasion, but this summer it's been like a little rainy here and there, so it's just it's odd. And the humidity, although nice for the plants, it's also kind of bad because it can cause mold and issues and such, so I'm having to keep an eye on some of these plants. I was watering a lot too. I think I was over watering some of our pepper plants, sadly, but I cut back on that. So this is the nasturtium I'm picking for tea, and I pick the flowers. I also pick the little buds that haven't yet opened, and I pick leaves. I'll pick some super nice leaves, and all of that gets dried out and goes into our tea. Nasturtium is so good. I don't know why, but I think it's high in vitamin C, and I just feel like if you are sick at all, this little flower is quite powerful and can help you overcome like a cold or a flu. So we picking a lot of that this year. The herbs in the back have been looking really good. We have been picking basil nonstop, and these plants are looking great. These are our tomatillos, and they're tall, very tall. I hope we get a lot of the fruit off of them to make salsa. Our ground cherries and eggplants are looking pretty good this year. We haven't really had an issue as much with aphids this year. In fact, they just showed up like a week ago, and I'm attributing it possibly to the fact that we did not put excess nitrogen in here. So I know some of you were chiming in about that, and that it probably is the case. I have been tremendously thrilled with our cucumbers this year. They are so small, I mean like 2 feet, but have been horribly productive. I'm not kidding you when I say we have harvested like 50 of these. We were harvesting these for weeks ago, and there's a bunch on them. We're actually going to be making some relish soon, and probably some pickles. There's more sunflowers and green beans over here, and these green beans are going the distance. We're going to go across. Very, very neat. That's it for the high tunnel right now. It's looking pretty promising. We have been harvesting things, and we can come in here and harvest peppers and such if we want, but a lot of it, you know, I'm really holding back to kind of wait for preserving it. So that's really the main purpose of our garden, is to grow it as quick as we can and then harvest it and preserve it for 6 months. So we have not taken too much of a look at our orchard, and we're actually going to head over there right now. Okay, welcome to the mini orchard. We've come a long way since we were last in here, and things have been doing okay. They've been doing okay. It's our first year with the fruit trees. Actually, it's our second year. They overwintered. We have 2 plums and 5 apples. And if you remember us showing them in the winter months and then in the spring months, we had some damage with the late snow. Some of the branches broke. Some of the trees are doing okay, and some of them are not doing as okay. So let's take a look. This is our mint that we relocated, and it's doing much better. We've got chocolate mint, peppermint, and spearmint right there. This tree probably took the biggest hit. This is, I think it's Norland, it's an apple tree, and 2 of the branches, really big branches, broke late season, and we put beeswax on them, and I will tell you, it actually worked very well. It was able to keep the moisture in the tree and keep, you know, an infection from getting in there. It looks really good. I think it's going to heal, but it's not very pretty, and it's probably going to look like that for a few years until it, you know, forms some scar tissue, I guess we'll say. And unfortunately, this year it was attacked by caterpillars. We had caterpillars early season, and I think they sensed that this one was struggling. So that is why it's missing some of its little buds. But I think next year it'll do better. This guy, although small, is doing quite well. You can see it's got lots of growth, and the green The light green are the newer leaves, and then it has a little bit of the older leaves that it put on first. That one looks really nice. There's one of those little caterpillars I was talking about. These fuzzy little guys have been on lots of our plants this year. They were on a lot of our plants last year. They're a rusty tussock from the rusty tussock moth. They're really not a problem when there's a few of them, but there hasn't been just a few. There's been thousands, millions probably actually. They're not as bad this year as they were last year. So we're going to just put him somewhere else. This is another plum tree. This one's looking really good. We have another plum tree over here not looking as good. It didn't lose its leaves last fall, and I feel like that was an issue, and I think it's obvious that was an issue. So this tree is not doing great. I called the supplier that we got them from. He said to let it stay for another year because it's most likely still alive. He was correct. It is absolutely alive. You can see the leaves on the lower trunk, and you can tell by how flexible it is. You know, we pruned it back a little bit and got to the green layer in there to tell when it was alive. And you can tell, like, because it's bendy, the tree is still alive. It has moisture in it. It's pretty sad. I don't know what's going to happen. My guess is it's probably going to make a comeback. We'll probably have to prune it a lot more next year. But for these trees, this is their second year. We're just going to let them do their thing. I'm not really pruning them, and we're going to see how they fare next year. Apparently, it was a pretty hard winter for a lot of fruit trees, and a lot of folks' fruit trees didn't actually survive the winter. So I'm happy ours survived. This other guy is looking really good. This is Fort Mac. Actually looks nice. It's put on a lot of growth. Got another one back here. And over in this bed we have our rhubarb that we started from seed. You can tell the caterpillars have munched on it a little bit. And I'm pretty impressed with the stalk size. It's got some really big stalks. We're not going to harvest from it this year. That's okay. We'll harvest from it next year. And there's one more apple tree right here. This one also had a branch break, and we put some beeswax on it, but this area we must have failed to put some beeswax, and you can see that it looks like it's dying. It has some sort of maybe an infection. So I'm not sure if we're going to need to prune this one back. Again, kind of sad, but fruit trees up here are a challenge, and this was to be expected. So we're kind of, you know, seeing if it'll work up here. I'm pleasantly surprised that they did over winter, and they are putting on growth every year. So I think it'll be something that works out in the future. You may have noticed that we added wood chips to this garden area, which is awesome. Again, with the weeds, they were getting a little out of control. It was bare soil in here. I had intended to seed some white clover, but I just decided against it. We don't have time for weeds, and I know no matter what, we're always going to be pulling them. So this whole fabric, we laid the fabric down again, and then the wood chips, it really worked out nicely. We didn't have anywhere to put these wood chips either at our other property, so it was a nice use of them. I think they look really awesome in here. There's good and bad along this flower row in the back. We had moved a lot of plants from our other garden over to here last year, and a lot of them are perennials. A lot of those made a comeback. Few of them didn't quite come back as much as I hoped. echinacea and catnip, surprisingly, look like they're struggling this year, but a lot of the other ones did come back, and I planted more perennials. I also seeded wildflowers, but because they take about a month to germinate, that just didn't work out well with the weeds. I ended up with this whole thing covered in weeds, and we just recently weeded it, so it's looking good again. I got to put a little bit more dirt, and I'm going to decide what I want to do next year. I'll probably just end up filling it in with more perennials instead of trying to grow wildflowers. This is tarragon. It obviously overwinters pretty well, and our oregano made it again this year. It's not as big as last year. That's something I'm learning. This is our third year here, and it just seems like different years certain things survive and some things don't other years. So all in all, this area is not quite going as I had planned or anticipated, but that's all right because it's getting there. And like some of our things here that we're trying in Alaska, it just takes a few years to really figure it out, shall I say. So I'm hopeful in a few years this will fill out and look more grand. Of course, we had to make sure that Hunter's Rock was exposed, so I cut that out, and Bo likes to stand on it. Although we haven't been doing too much canning yet, in fact, We haven't really been doing any canning of our produce. We're going to be soon, and then it's going to be non-stop until the fall. So we will make sure to show you guys lots of those videos of things we're canning, and we will catch you on the next one. Look at this. Look at that squinch face. Squinchy. Hi.